Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Release to Rise podcast. I am your host, Kate Patra, and I am so excited to talk about this topic today because it's something that helped me immensely. And per usual, I do not want you guys to struggle in the way I did. And so I'm just constantly trying to think of things that I can share about my experience that will help prevent you from struggling in the way I did. Now, I'm going to explain everything in my own words, the way that I've experienced it, the way that it applies to me, and hopefully it will make sense to you. So, what are we talking about today? This life changing perspective helped me understand why I'm not healing. It helped me understand why I would feel like I was taking 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And it really taught me how I can truly, 100% fully address the issues I wanted to heal, whether that was physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever it might be, whatever challenges I was going through in whatever area of life. This concept really helped me fully shift that and fully heal. And not only fully heal it, but then sustain it. Because I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times in my healing journey, especially with my physical ailments that I've gone through, I would get some relief. I would get excited and hopeful. And I would think, yes, I am on the right track. I'm going to feel so much better. A year from now, it's going to be such a different me. I'm going to be able to eat what I want. My digestive system's going to be great. My reproductive system's going to be great. I'm going to be the pillar of health. And then a couple months down the road, I would feel like I was right back to square one. And it's really frustrating when that happens. Incredibly frustrating when that happens. And so this concept that we're going to talk about, where we really hone in on the 3 pillars of healing and what you truly need to fully heal, will help alleviate that frustration for you, because there's nothing more disheartening, especially when you're not feeling yourself. You just want life to be back to normal. You get excited that something's going to help, and it does, but it doesn't fully shift it or heal it. We don't want that for you. I want you to fully shift and fully heal all the things so that you can be living your optimal life and feel the best that you can feel the healthiest, be the best version of you that you can be. The concept that really changed my life in terms of how I viewed my healing journey was really looking at healing as having 3 pillars. Sometimes I'll say pillars, sometimes I'll use a triangle graphic. Either way, just know there's 3 components to this. There's addressing the physical, there's addressing the energetic, and there's addressing the emotional root cause. Typically, I was either ignoring one or more of the areas when I would try to heal. And again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I would think that going to the doctor would help, and that was my physical action, and they would give me a medicine, and oh, okay, that's another physical action, and yet nothing was improving. Well, I wasn't dealing with the energetic, and I wasn't dealing with the emotional root cause. I'll give you an example. When I was having digestive issues in my early 20s, I know we've talked about this before, but for those of you who haven't heard other episodes, I had irritable bowel syndrome in my early 20s, 23, 24. I mean, to the point where I would be driving to work, have to wing it into a Dunkin' Donuts to use their bathroom, try my best to get through a class because I was a teacher, a special education teacher, and was just constantly having to use the bathroom all day long. I mean, it really did impact my life. And I went the whole Western medicine route. I went to a gastroenterologist. We did the colonoscopy. He gave me a medicine to put under my tongue, and it was supposed to help. It was going to just save everything. It truly did nothing. It didn't do a dang thing. We had a holistic store. It was called Nature Time. And I loved this store because it had all sorts of different stuff and supplements, but also foods. It's like a little grocery store, a little holistic grocery store too. And then they also had some Eastern medicine practitioners in there. And so I went in and was like, here's what's going on. She set me up with some supplements. She had me do a candida cleanse. Again, I was doing the physical actions, and I did find some relief. I really did. But it never truly fully healed. I wasn't addressing the emotional root cause of why I had irritable bowel syndrome to begin with, and I wasn't energetically addressing anything. But I didn't understand the energetic world at that time. I'm 24. I'm just trying to get through a workday without pooping my pants. Thankfully, I never did, guys. So go me. Go me. That was a big win. Big win for an IBS story is if you don't poop your pants. I mean, high five. But I digress. So that's just an example of someone who's just focusing on the physical and not really looking at the other areas of life that are impacting that, because everything physical that happens to us starts as an emotional root cause. Every single thing, from something like IBS to a mosquito bite, to a sty in your eye, to a hangnail, to a blister on your heel, to cancer, to infertility, you name it, it all starts with an emotional root cause. We just ignore the emotional root cause because we're not taught about that stuff. I never heard about that stuff until a few years ago. So you ignore that, right? We ignore it. We just go about our lives. We don't check in with our emotions. We might be a little disconnected, a little detached, like I was. And then, sure enough, your body will say, okay, if you're not going to address this, then I'm going to speak louder. And for me, it showed up in irritable bowel syndrome. Glorious. Thank you for getting my attention, because nothing will get your attention like feeling like you are going to soil yourself on the way to work. But even at that age, I didn't understand that there was an emotional root cause. My eyes just weren't open to that yet. Now that I've learned that, I think, oh, that makes total sense. It makes total sense why I was experiencing it, where it came from, and then how I truly shifted my digestive system, which now is in a healthier, happier space. With 3 pillars of healing, it's kind of like a 3-legged stool. You can deal with the physical, that's one leg, the energetic, that's another, and the emotional root cause. You have to, if you have a broken stool, you have to fix and make sure all of them are stable in order to fully heal. Otherwise, your stool is going to get wobbly. It's not going to work. The way that we heal and the way that we remain healthy is by addressing emotional root causes, energetics, I should say, and the physical things in our lives. Physical things could be movement, it could be nutrition, it could be supplements, all of that type of stuff. What do we do during our day physically to support us? And then emotionally is looking at that root cause. What is the emotional root? Where did this start from? And I guarantee it's going to start years before you even realized it. And then the energetics is moving energy through. It's transmuting energy. Because remember, in middle school, there's this law, I think it's called the law of conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. But energy needs to be moved and transmuted within our body. And oftentimes we don't do that. And there's so many different ways to do it. It doesn't even have to be the emotion code, body code, and belief code work that I do. It can be Reiki, it can be acupuncture, it can be somatic movement, really just crying it out, punching, screaming into a pillow, any of those things, letting yourself weep if you feel upset, really moving that energy out. We are in a society where when we cry, we apologize. We apologize for our emotions. We apologize for this moving of energy. Yet crying is so cathartic. Crying is actually a way for our body physiologically to calm our nervous system down. And yet when we feel that urge to cry, we immediately apologize. So there's a lot of different cultural programming that hinders us from energetically moving and transmuting this stuck energy or this negative energy into something more positive. We don't work on it. It's uncomfortable. It can be confusing. Am I doing it right? What am I supposed to be doing? I get it. It's overwhelming. And there's a lot of noise out there. But if you just understand that there are 3 pillars to this, 3 pillars to healing either your mental state, your emotional state, your physical body, your spiritual body, whatever it might be. And I'll give you guys some examples. But if you focus on these 3 pillars, then you're going to find that you really, truly heal. You don't just put Band-Aids on your symptoms, and you don't just have a couple good months and then revert back to the bloating, the gas, the insomnia, whatever it might be, your struggle. You truly heal it, because our bodies were designed to heal. And that's the whole premise of the energy work I do. Our bodies were designed to heal themselves, but we become energetically imbalanced in some sort of way because our bodies are dealing with a lot of things that when we were created wasn't on the bingo card, including a bingo card. EMFs, blue light, 5G, pollution, social media, phones, stress from the collective, all of these things weren't on the radar when we were created, and they continually imbalance us, whether we like them to or not. And that's not to scare you, but it's just to say, be aware, because there's tools that we can use to balance ourselves. But when we're imbalanced, then energy gets stuck within us. And then we might not feel like moving and transmuting that energy out of us. You might get mad at your partner or mad at your coworker. And not to say you have to scream at them, but you have to get that energy out. You have to express it. Otherwise, it sticks in your system, it festers, it blocks your body's ability to have energy flow, and it also blocks your body's innate ability to heal itself. And that's why we get physical symptoms. Physical symptoms are just a byproduct or an end product of ignoring the energetics and the emotional root cause. All three of the legs of this stool are so equally important, but we often ignore one or more of them. Sometimes it's just easier to. Sometimes we don't notice because life is busy. And that's not to say you go beat yourself up over that. No. It's just an awareness. Once you're aware of this concept, then you start thinking of things a little differently and you go, oh, that's why I felt better here, but then I backslid and had more symptoms. Or that's why this happened and then I didn't really heal. That didn't even work. You just see things in a different light. I'll give you an example. I've had multiple friends, including me, who have struggled with depression. One friend in particular, there were multiple causes of why she was feeling depressed. And when I use this template of the 3 pillars of healing, when I look at the physical, when I look at the energetics, and when I look at the emotional root cause, it's no surprise that she was struggling. She went on an antidepressant, which there's no shame in that. If that's something that's for you, go for it. For me, I was on SSRIs for years. I didn't understand that they were robbing my body of minerals. And so now I have some long-term effects of that I have to deal with. But that is not to say that I am anti-drugs. Nothing is good or bad. Everything is both. So prescription meds are good and bad, just like holistic methods can be good and bad. Everything is both. So please know that when I talk about this, it's coming from a very non-judgmental place, because in this world, every single thing is both good and bad. And when you start to see it that way, it kind of dissipates the judgment. So this friend of mine, when I looked at the 3 pillars for her, physically, she had a ton of gut stuff going on. She had a ton of gut imbalances going on. Our gut is like our second brain. There's no coincidence that when we're anxious, we feel butterflies in our stomach. Our stomach is responsible for feelings of anxiety, despair, disgust, nervousness, worry, feeling failure, feeling helplessness, hopelessness, feeling lack of control, and feeling low self-esteem. Those emotions are generated by not only our stomach, but our spleen. If we have a stomach imbalance, we're going to generate those more. Now for her gut microbiome was all messed up from years of antibiotics because she was really sick when she was little. So that killed all the good bacteria in her stomach. She developed IBS. Physically, her gut was off. Emotionally, that can cause depression. So there's the physical connection. The emotional root cause of depression is often linked to when we feel disconnected from our soul's purpose. When we feel disconnected from our true self, it can cause deep depression within us. So when I intuitively looked in, on a scale of 0 to 100, how connected is she to her soul purpose? She was at like a 15%. She was in a job that she didn't love, which we can talk about the 3 pillars there too, because that's a common thing. But she was unfulfilled every day. And so although she's doing what she needs to do to pay the bills, this emotional root cause, she is super disconnected from what she truly wanted to do, what her soul was here to do, because we're all here for a purpose. We all have a very specific purpose. We are all uniquely designed to fulfill our own specific purpose. That's why our self-love and our self-image should be so high. Because how cool is that? I am here for one specific thing. You are here for another. But when we get disconnected from that, that can cause depression. So her gut was off. That's a physical cause. Emotional root cause, she's disconnected from her soul purpose. And energetically, the spleen and the stomach generate emotions of anxiety, despair, disgust, nervousness, feeling failure, feeling helplessness, feeling hopelessness, lack of control, and low self-esteem. So on an energetic level, if you have stuck energy trapped emotions of depression, or if your spleen's imbalanced, or if your stomach is imbalanced, you're going to generate those emotions more. And that's going to foster more depression and anxiety and despair and increase your depression, increase your sadness. You can also have belief systems that very much can keep you stuck in a depressive state. Subconscious beliefs that are running the show that you don't even realize are contributing to your depression. I know that happened to me. That's a whole episode in itself. Whew. They were really ruling the show that I didn't even understand with my depression. So this friend had 3 things going on in the 3 pillars of healing that she wasn't addressing. And so the SSRI she was taking, it wasn't helping. It would help a little bit, but not a lot. And that's why I laugh when I see these commercials on TV. Is your antidepressant not helping you enough? Try this drug. And then here are 5 million different side effects. And I laugh because if that drug's not working, don't put another Band-Aid on of another drug. We've got to get to the emotional root cause, and we've got to move some energy. There's so many different ways you can move and transmute your energy, but you've got to move it out. We've got to move it. Otherwise, you will stay stuck in your healing. And that's when despair happens, and that's when frustration happens, and you feel horrible. You see a lot of depression lately, and I often am not surprised that the antidepressants and the medications aren't working. It's because we're not dealing with all legs of the stool. We're only handling it through the physical. We're not addressing all the legs, the physical contributions, the emotional root cause, and the energetics that are stuck within our system. But then we're also not trying to heal it by addressing the physical, addressing the emotional, addressing the energetics. Because if we balanced the gut, if we worked with a gut specialist or a hormone specialist, if we start healing our gut and then check in with your emotions, if we start looking at what the emotional root cause is, because in general, it's being disconnected from your soul purpose, your true self. But if you can find someone who's intuitive, who can go in and really dive into when did this start and what is your soul purpose, and really get the details on that, have a good intuitive read, that can address that. And then if you have someone who can help you shift the energy, whether it's acupuncturist or Reiki or belief body emotion code like I do, or somatic work, if you expressed and moved that energy and transmuted it into something positive, I guarantee you will feel better and you will feel less depressed. I used to be on an antidepressant for years. I am no longer on an antidepressant. I don't need it anymore. Because instead of trying to heal it with the physical, the prescription drug, I didn't understand. When I did understand the 3 pillars of healing, that's when I truly shifted. That's when I made significant and sustainable progress in my healing of depression. And now I don't need it anymore. And that's not to say I don't have sad days, but I know what to look into. I have a trained intuition, so I know how to get to the emotional root cause, and I also know how to release the energy. And if you don't know that, no big deal. There's plenty of people out there that do. I'm seeing a lot of us who are struggling with our reproductive systems. And that's something that I'm continuing to work on now. For me, I just had an ultrasound where they found ovarian cysts and they found fibroids. And I've known that I've had these. It's no shocker. For many of us, we're dealing with infertility. For many of us, we're dealing with painful periods. We're dealing with horrible PMS. We're dealing with the fibroids, the cysts, all of the things. When I look in at the 3 pillars of healing and the 3 areas to focus on, when I look in at cysts in general related to replaying old movies or old experiences, replaying them in your mind and reliving them. You know, those moments in time where you know what you were wearing, what was happening, what was going on, and you can relive everything that was said. You can even muster up the emotion you felt in that time. You know, those experiences, that is what is associated with ovarian cysts. Well, guess who's really good at reliving old fights and arguments and stuff that made me feel horrible? Me. I am. Not a shocker that I have ovarian cysts. Ovarian cysts are also related to an anger about not creating, because our reproductive systems are all about creation. It is what God intended to help us create life. And so in general, when we have reproductive issues, it's typically associated with creation. It can also be associated with rejecting the feminine creation or creativity as well. I know that one of my emotional root causes is replaying old situations. This is what makes me a good manifester, but is also a detriment. Remember, everything is good and bad. I can imagine something so vividly and replay something so vividly, it's almost as if it happens again. My body and my subconscious don't know any different. So if I'm reliving it in my mind, my body's going to register that it's actually happening again. Fibroids is when you're nursing kind of a hurt from a partner. You're angry at the opposite sex. You're repressing the feminine part of you. You have resentment, frustration. You feel undervalued. And when you have that for a long period of time, you have that emotional root cause and you don't address it, it's going to manifest in fibroids. So for me, and this is specifically for me, but for me, I definitely have had a lot of resentment, frustration, and feeling undervalued, not only in relationships, but also in vocation and other areas of life. So it's not a surprise to me that I have fibroids. I just have to look into the emotional root cause. There are so many of us who feel that resentment, who feel that lack of value, who feel so underappreciated. And I think as women, we go through this world feeling very unappreciated. It can start to fester as resentment and it can start to fester as frustration, and rightly so. So when we look at our reproductive system, the emotional root cause of those two symptoms are specific. But when our reproductive system is off, typically it's a rejection of the feminine. And the feminine is what we perceive is happening to us. So if we have a problem with what is happening to us in one or more area of life, it can manifest as issues in our reproductive system. And I'm seeing a lot of issues in a lot of our reproductive systems. And it makes sense why. So you look at the emotional root cause there. Now, if you look at physical reasons of why we have reproductive issues, it can be childhood trauma and it can be chronic stress. Chronic stress will increase cortisol. That disrupts hormones. And then that is going to disrupt our reproductive system. Also, there are so many endocrine disruptors out there. Oh my goodness. I mean, all the candles I used to burn, the Glade plugins I used to use, the detergent I used to use, the makeup I used. There's just so many of them that are endocrine disruptors. They disrupt our endocrine system, but they also can be phytoestrogens. They mimic estrogen and then it throws off your hormones. But it's stuff that we're putting on our skin daily, on our eyes, wearing daily if it's detergent, sleeping in if we wash our sheets in it, smelling it if we have a candle. They're everywhere. So there's a lot of physical reasons why our reproductive system can be off. Now, energetically, there's so many things that I see in my own sessions and that are trapped within people's system. So think trapped emotions in your glands and your reproductive system. A lot of those emotions can be related to pride, shame, shock, unworthy, worthlessness. That's what our reproductive system generates, those emotions. So if we feel a ton of shame in our life, if we feel worthless, if we feel unworthy, that's going to imbalance our reproductive system. And conversely, having that imbalance is going to then have us generate more of those emotions. It's kind of a vicious cycle. You also can have belief systems that are related to survival, because survival is all about worth and safety and trust and control. You can have belief systems related in the passion area of life that we need to get rid of. We can have a ton of negative programming of subconscious filters being turned on that are impacting our reproductive systems. If we don't feel trusting and we don't feel safe, we are not going to create or feel safe to create. And that is going to throw off our reproductive system. And that's whether you want to create a child or not. Doesn't mean you have to, but you have to embrace the feminine and feel safe in that. And when you don't, that is going to energetically throw your reproductive system off. You might have a misaligned ovary or misaligned uterus. You could need a whole reproductive system protocol where I recircuit everything. It just might not be communicating. There's so many energetic reasons for us to have reproductive issues. And so if we're not addressing all of these root causes of the emotional root cause, the physical impacts that will imbalance our reproductive system, and the energetic impacts that will imbalance our reproductive system, then we're not going to heal our reproductive system. We're only going to be fixing one leg of the stool instead of all three. You can't sit on that. We really need to address all three. I also hear so much about how people are really unhappy and frustrated in their job. And if we look at the three pillars of healing and we dissect what pillar is causing what, and then try to heal it, a lot of times the physical reasons people are unhappy in their job, they're tired, they're burnout, they're bored, they're stressed, they're exhausted. It's a toxic culture. They can feel stagnant. Sometimes people feel stuck. if we're not learning, if things aren't exciting, if we're not intrigued by what we do, then that can cause discomfort and unhappiness in our vocation area and our job. If we're sitting all day, that's another huge component of the physical part of why we can be unhappy in our job. We need somatics to let the emotions out. If you get angry at a coworker and you do nothing about it, that's going to fester and imbalance you, and then it's going to snowball. And before you know it, then you will have physical symptoms. And that's where burnout comes in. If you look at the emotional root cause of being unhappy in your vocation, it's disconnection from the soul purpose. It's similar to depression because oftentimes they go hand in hand. Then it's really looking at, what is your soul purpose? What are you here to do? And I'm not saying to go quit your job by any means, but if you look at physically, what is uncomfortable about this job? I'm burnout. I hate sitting all day. I'm frustrated that every time I voice my opinion, no one's taking it into consideration. I've been doing this job for so long and I don't feel respected. There's this frustration of not being heard and understood. It seems so boring now. It's just Groundhog's Day every day. There's nothing that's interesting. If you understand that on the physical level, then you can go, okay, how can I make today interesting? How can I start to feel valued? Well, we know with reflections, you have to start by valuing yourself. But then that physically will be reciprocated to you when you change that. So there's different ways. If you don't like sitting all day, can I get a walking desk? What are the physical things you need to do to combat those physical causes of the unhappiness? With the emotional root cause, if you're disconnected from your soul purpose, what can you do to address that? Well, I can look in and go, okay, what is my real soul purpose? How can I make this job satisfy that component? If my real soul purpose is to nurture other people, then what can I do in my day-to-day where I'm nurturing someone every day? So that I get that rush, that heart-filling warmth, that, man, this really feels good to do it. That's what you want to look for. And energetically, there's so many things that can cause you to be unhappy in your job that really aren't the truth of you actually being unhappy in your job. There are these energies called no will to energy and will to energy. And no will to energy can literally get stuck in your field and cause you to not have the will to do something. And on the flip side, will to energy can cause you to do something. And usually it's not something that's a great thing. And so I can release those, and then it balances my energy so that I'm coming from a more neutral place and I'm seeing my job in a more neutral light. There's another thing, when our hearts are imbalanced, we can often generate more emotions of effort unreceived. And so when your heart's imbalanced, you're more likely to feel like everything you try, everything you do, no one appreciates it, no one receives it. What I wish I had known before I left special education were these three pillars, because I would have stopped and looked and said, okay, physically, where am I frustrated? Physically, I was bored. I loved my job. I was really good at it. And I loved testing kids and teaching kids and writing reports. I loved it. And also at the same time, it was stagnant. I was 19 years in, 19 years in 7th and 8th grade curriculum, 19 years of helping kids on the same projects and reading the same books. And had I known that, then I could have taken control and looked for workshops where I've learned something. I love to test kids. I could have looked for a different assessment to use or study on my own time. I could have tried to find a different book to read in my resource room. And I did do that. And when I did do that, I remember, you guys, I remember canning. We had a reading program. This was years ago. We had a reading program. It was so boring. It was like a scripted, you open the book and it was like, say the lines that are in the red. I mean, it was horrible. It was horrible. And talk about taking all the creativity away from a teacher. But anyway, I bagged that program for 3 months and we read The Hunger Games together. This was before the movie came out, so none of them could cheat and watch the movie, and we read it together. I went on Teachers Pay Teachers. I found somebody who made this baller curriculum, and I used most of it, and I taught Hunger Games to kids who are reading on a 2nd, 3rd grade level. And we read the book together. We did a lot of fun activities, and then we went to the movie afterwards as a field trip, which was so cool. It was like such a cool culmination. Then we got to talk about how the book compared to the movie, and guess what? Not only did I have the best time, but those kids had the best time. They had the best time because I was having fun. They were having fun. We were all interested and intrigued. And for once, we weren't doing the same rotations and the same activities and the same workbook every day. We livened it up. I wasn't unhappy in my job that time. I remember that clear as day. It's one of my favorite memories. And also, side note, when I had them take the reading assessment, I think they took it quarterly, so it was right afterwards, all of their reading scores went up. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So, had I known this, had I considered this, because that was probably year 14, 13 in my career, I was still having the best time. By year 18, 19, you're getting a little bored. Had I known this, I would have just tapped back in and been like, okay, let's do something fun. But physically, I was a little burnout. I also didn't understand what my sole purpose was. And although I do think it's in the world of special education at some point down the road, the education system wasn't a good fit for me anymore because it was really, really hard to advocate for kids and then have somebody say, sorry, that's not in your budget. That didn't sit well with my heart. Because if this kid needs this in order for them to learn, why are we not providing that? And so there was a lot of emotional upheaval that I would experience and frustration, and that caused resentment. And oh, shocker, then my body got imbalanced. Had I understood the energetics of what I was feeling and the stuck energy in my imbalances, I might not have left teaching right away. I think eventually I would have, because I do feel like my purpose is to help heal people on an energetic level. But I also think I wouldn't have gotten here without being a teacher first. And I'm very grateful for that. And I miss it every day. I miss parts of it every day, I should say. But had I known these 3 pillars, I don't think I would have left in the way that I did as quickly and abruptly as I did. I just panicked, was burnout, was having all these health issues, and I was like, I gotta go. I like to think of these things and consider these things now when I'm struggling. You know, there's somebody I know who really struggles financially, and not in the fact that she doesn't have finances, but in the fact that she really has this kind of a scarcity mentality. There's a fear of money, both having too much of it and not having enough of it. And financial fears and finances come up a lot with the people that I work with, and they come up a lot with my friends and family. It's interesting because if you look at it through the 3 pillars, the physical, the emotional root cause, and the energetics, it really makes sense as to why some of us are really struggling to feel comfortable with money. The physical reason, this person in particular, really feeling stuck at a certain pay and feeling trapped by the system. Feeling like I have to do this because I need this money. I don't have a choice. And not to say that that's not a valid thought, but it's important to note that that is the physical thought and feeling that's going through her body. Also, she was raised by parents who were raised by parents from the Depression era. And that very much will manifest with parents who are raised by parents in the Depression era are going to feel immense fear about losing money because of their experience. They then have such a fear and a strict rigidity with money and a scarcity mentality that gets passed on to their children. When their children grow up, that scarcity mentality, although it might not be as strong, is still there. And then when they have children, they will pass that on. And again, there's no good or bad. It just is what it is. But if you're raised by someone who lived in poverty or had parents who lived in poverty or went through moments where money was tight, there is going to be that scarcity mentality. And it is going to pass along. So this person who really struggles to not be afraid and struggles to feel safe with money, the physical experiences she had growing up of, we don't have any money for that. You can't afford new shoes. We're going to get hand-me-downs. You know, all of the things that she experienced. We're not going to take a vacation. We can't afford that. You know, hearing that stuff, when you hear that stuff, physically, that's an experience that she went through. And then oddly enough, then it does turn on a limiting belief within your subconscious that then rules the show energetically. So those two really go hand in hand. Because on an energetic level, you can have your belief systems from childhood programming, but then you can also have that cultural pressure, the social comparison, past obstacles that you've been through that reinforce the belief system. It's very much like a survival adaptation. Our brain is going to prioritize avoiding pain, and that could be avoiding deprivation, instability, and rejections. We prioritize that over, let's say, putting ourselves first or taking a risk or taking a risky opportunity or growth. We avoid those things and we stay stuck financially because it's super scary to take that risk. It was really hard for me to leave a job after 19 years where I had a pension, I had great insurance, and I finally, because I had taken doctoral classes, I had finally gotten my pay up to a decent amount, because that's how people in the education system have to increase their pay, which is crazy. That's a whole other story. But anyway, I digress. But I was making good money doing what I was doing. And for me to give all of that up was terrifying. And probably one of the reasons that I didn't go as quick was because of that, to be honest. Physically, you're feeling stuck. Energetically, you have all these belief systems and these fears, and your brain's in that survival adaptation. So you forego growth, you forego opportunities because you're just trying to avoid the pain, the instability, the fear, the discomfort, the scarcity. And then the emotional root cause for this person in particular, and this is so common, finances were equated to her worth. So really feeling a couple things. One, you must work hard to deserve anything. So everything takes hard work, everything. If you're going to be successful, you got to work around the clock. That mentality was stuck. That was an emotional root cause. That was something that was ingrained in her from when she was little. Everything is hard work. Everything takes sacrifice. If you're going to make any money, you have to work, 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 work. Which is no surprise that we're all workaholics and all burn out. Also, money meant safety to her. And if she isn't earning more, then she's falling behind. So really beating herself up, I have to keep earning more and more and more and more and more and more, not only to be safe and secure, but I don't want to fall behind because I'm nothing if I'm not making money. And that's where a lot of people, their emotional root cause of their financial obstacles and challenges come from. None of this takes into account health or happiness or the fact that we're worthy of anything and everything simply because we're here. Everything was associated with financially, her worth, how much she made, what that paycheck was. She brought it in. She could breathe. She could feel worthy. She could feel successful. And if she didn't, she couldn't feel any of those things. So when you look at that from a financial lens, the physical causes, the emotional root cause, and the energetic things that are blocking her, once you know that, then you can do the energy work to reprogram the subconscious. Rewrite that. You can get rid of those limiting beliefs. You can get rid of those negative programs so that your body can then start to feel safe. You can look at the emotional root cause, specifically look. Yes, we have the general view, but you can specifically look at the emotional root cause and address it and go, okay, if this is where this stemmed from, how can I make myself feel safe every day, regardless of how much money? How can I make myself feel worthy, even if I make no money today? And then physically really helping regulate the nervous system, because her nervous system was getting dysregulated. Anytime finances came into a discussion, into her mind, her nervous system would get jacked up. And then she would go through that survival adaptation where her brain was like, let's avoid pain. I got to avoid pain. And she wouldn't see different opportunities and positive risks she could take that would bring in more income and bring her what she wanted to achieve in life. When we start looking at things using these three pillars, looking at the physical causes, looking at the emotional root causes, and looking at the potential energies that need to be moved and transmuted, when we start doing that, that's when we bring about true change. And that's when you not only have a good 1 month, 2 month, 3 months, you don't backslide, you keep moving forward because you've addressed it at the root. You haven't thrown a Band-Aid on it. You've addressed the root causes of all the three pillars. Then it's amazing how your life just expands. When true healing happens, it makes you realize how you thought you were healing before and you weren't. I know that happened to me. I was like, oh, I thought I was good for now. Not a shocker. I had acid reflux in my 20s. Why am I surprised that it came up now? Shouldn't be surprised because I wasn't dealing with the emotional root cause. Physically, I took Nexium in my 20s. And then physically, this time, I was staying away from spicy foods and things like that. I was addressing energetically, but I wasn't addressing the emotional root cause. And that's the anger about not feeling like I can express myself. When I intuitively look in, I am so angry about years of not feeling like I can express myself. So now, when I do my energy sessions, it's related to that. When I do my emotional root cause work, it is somatic movement. I am screaming into pillows. I am punching pillows. I am writing angry letters and ripping them up. I am doing everything I can. And I fully understand that it took me years to get to this place. It's going to take time to heal, but at least I'm doing it. And I will tell you guys, my acid reflux, it is getting better. I'm not having the breathing issues and having the food come up and burn my esophagus the way it used to. And that is because I'm dealing with all three pillars. I'm fixing all three legs of the stool so that I can sit down and relax and enjoy my life. If you've lasted this long through this, it is because you are meant to hear this. If you were pulled to this podcast, it is because you are supposed to be learning something from it for you or for someone you know. If you've lasted this long, I thank you. This really is just scratching the surface. I could go so much more in depth with this topic, but I don't want to overwhelm you guys with information. I think just an awareness of this first and how it can play into our lives is super important. If you have any questions, as always, let me know. I put my email in the show notes. And then if you want to hop on webinars where you can ask them live, make sure to sign up for my newsletter. You go to my website, again in the show notes, go to my website. On the homepage of my website, scroll down and you'll see a tan box that says sign up for newsletters. Go ahead and do that because that is how you will learn about my webinars. I don't post them anywhere else but on my email list. The webinars are really not only for live Q&A, but they are for anyone who wants more in-depth, anyone who wants to learn faster, learn more, grow a little bit quicker. If that feels like you, please make sure to get on that email list. I don't want you to miss out on anything. All right, my friends, happy healing, and I will talk to you soon. Love you. Bye.